Good night and welcome to another program from the Full and Abundant Life. And it is certainly a privilege to be with all of you tonight. And of course, for those of you in the Caribbean, it's wonderful, sunny. I would think you had a great day. Of course, for us here in the Northeast, it's been rather cold. So right now, we're just waiting on the WFM team to connect with us. And as soon as we are connected, we certainly will begin our program here tonight. We certainly want to welcome all of you who've already um, tuned in to the program. And we hope this of course, let me just connect.
Join Dr. Claudius Davis on the Full and Abundant Life program here on WeFM 99.9, Wednesdays 9 to 10 p.m., as he explores the elements that might be robbing you and keeping you from realizing your full potential. It is time to break those chains of bondage. It is time to shake off what's been holding you back. The Full and Abundant Life program, 9 to 10 p.m., every Wednesday on WeFM 99.9 with Dr. Claudius Davis.
Just 2 minutes ago past the 9 o'clock hour here in the Eastern Caribbean as you continue to listen to WeFM 99.9. It is now time for us to present to you this evening's program, the Full and Abundant Life radio program with Dr. Claudius Davis. This program comes your way each and every Wednesday from 9 until 10. Just remind you as well that it's an interactive program, and to be a part of this evening's program, the number to call 457-9997. That's 457-9997. You can also send us a WhatsApp text or place a WhatsApp call at 457-9997 to be a part of this evening's Full and Abundant Life radio program. So without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to Dr. Claudius Davis. Dr. Davis, good night and welcome once again.
And good night to you, sir. And it's certainly a privilege to be back here with you, bringing this program. And of course, as Kamal reminded us, that this is an interactive program, and certainly you can. And he did give us the numbers earlier for those of you who are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and others who are in the diaspora, of course. You certainly can use the WhatsApp, either send a message or a text there. Also, for those of you who are on the Facebook page, you certainly can also interact there, and I will try to pay some attention to the Facebook page as well, so that I can at least share some of your thoughts and your ideas. But again, for those of you in St. Vincent and Grenadines, we certainly want to remind you just to take advantage of the local numbers there in the WFM studio, so that you can share your thoughts and ideas. Of course, we want to continue our discussion from last week. Of course, this is our fourth series, fourth lesson in the theme hope and a sense of well-being, and we've certainly been looking at that because ultimately everything that we do to find a sense of happiness, to find peace, security, and so just about everything that we do. And so it was Jesus himself who said that I came so that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And so what we're trying to explore here tonight is one, what that full and abundant life would look like, and two, how do you acquire it, and number three, how do you model this so that it can infect others and sort of have an impact on others. And I'm talking particularly within the family system, within the home itself. How do you do this? So I think that's where I really want to challenge us. And so there is a psychologist, Wendy Wood, and in her research, and this was published in the Psychology Journal of January 2026. And from this particular research, her argument is that what makes a difference in terms of who we are and how we experience ourselves and our behavior has to do with our long-term and short-term goals. And her argument is how do you move short-term goals to long-term goals, to where they become the automatic system where you don't even have to think about it. In other words, how do we do that? And I think Christianity, the gospel, the teachings of Jesus, really has modeled for us and has demonstrated to us how we can create such a transformation in our individual lives. And so I will, from time to time, quote some of the quotation from her that I think are important, because in her work, she suggests that much of human behavior is driven by automatic routines shaped by common context rather than conscious attention. And so, what, last time I gave an example of my work situation where, I'm so inundated in paperwork that it's during my lunch break, it is easier for me to just rush down to the cafeteria and get some French fries, come back with my French fries, and be able to sort of snack on that while I do my paperwork at the same time. And I find that goal is really I get my work done. I don't have to go out, especially this is winter. It's very cold. To go outside, start your car up, go to a restaurant or groceries or whatever to buy lunch. So it is so convenient for me to kind of just rush down to the cafeteria, get some French fries, come back, sit at my table, and continue my paperwork. But as you notice, that is in fact a short-term goal. But here's what is happening. During this short-term goal, now I have developed an appetite for French fries. And so even before the time, I find myself thinking, I wonder if the cook are finished. I wonder if the food is out. I wonder if the French fries are out. Are they out yet? And so my mind begins to now distract me from my work because there is something automatically happening where I'm not even thinking about it consciously. It seems like there's a habit that's been developed to where now my desire for these French fries becomes sort of a regular part of my routine. So what I seem like I have done successfully is to move this short-term goal, which is to get my paperwork done, avoid going outside in the cold, and get some quick French fry to munch on while I do my work. Short term. But now what has happened is, because of habit, because of the repetitiveness of it, the brain has developed this kind of template where it's moved it from this temporary goal, short-term goal, to now it has become a long-term goal. So now I drive by sometimes and I see McDonald's and I'm beginning to think French fries. Or I see some of these fast food places, that I'm beginning to, my brain, is saying you need to stop and get some French fries. So what has happened? And this is what this psychologist is talking about, that I have successfully take a short-term goal and transferred it into a long-term goal where it is now driving my behavior. I don't even have to think about it. And so much of our bad behaviors are actually through that process. But if you notice here, my motivation remains the same. My motivation is to stay healthy, eat healthy food. And so notice that goal never changes. It is still the same. But now I find myself gravitating towards junk food in the form of French fries. And there's a lot of salt on those things, okay, the way they do it. Because it's sort of very addictive, essentially. But now I still have my long-term goal. My motivation has not changed. Motivation hasn't changed. I still want to eat healthy. I want to stay healthy. Those are my long-term. But if you noticed, even though that motivation hasn't changed, yet something has changed. And what the research is saying is what has changed is the context. And so if you want to change your life, it's not so much about your motivation, and it's not so much about the knowledge, but rather it's about the context. And when I say the context, what I mean is that you can see where I want to work, get my paperwork done. I don't want to go out into the cold during the winter. It is convenient for me to stay in, get more work done, and at the same time be able to get some French fries and get enough of it where I can munch and still do my paperwork. So here, what has happened is the context rather, has now decided, or has now where it gotten to the point where my long-term goal, my motivation to eat healthy food and to stay healthy, those goals are still the same. The motivation is still the same, but the context has changed. And once I change the context, and that context becomes a habit, so now it is automatic now. I am automatically have a craving for French fries. And so I don't even have to think about it, because the brain has a way of figuring out what you do on a regular basis and develop shortcuts. So you don't have to think about it anymore. And so the bottom line for us here tonight is this. I want you to step back, look at your life, the quality of your life. And many of us have made a lot of New Year plans, a lot of things you're going to do. Some of you may have decided, I'm going to go back to church. I'm going to, start exercising, lose some weight. I'm going to get a new job. I'm going to get a new man. I'm going to get all kinds of goals that you have. But I want you to understand and to notice that the goals that you have are still the same. It's just that you haven't changed the context. And if you don't change the context, it means, though, you still are motivated, like I am. I'm motivated to eat healthy food, right? Not junk food. I'm motivated to have good health. Or those things don't change. But what has changed is the context. In other words, I have changed the long-term, the short-term goal, which was to get my paperwork done, avoid going out in the cold, get something quick to eat, have now become a lifestyle, a habit. And so what we're talking about here tonight, because I want us to do some serious reflection in terms of what is it that has caused you to be leading a life that you're not satisfied with, about your failures, whether it be drug, alcohol, whatever it is that's going on, maybe in your own marriage, that there are some things that are happening, it's happening, and you want to change it. You have a better goal. You want to have a healthier marriage, a richer relationship. You have all these wonderful goals, but somehow the context never seems to be changing. It is always the same problem. And so I want us to begin to question ourselves, because it's not just about preaching and telling people about truth, but rather it's about helping people to transform, to change their lives, to live healthier lives, to be able to feel good on the inside, because that was the whole purpose of what Jesus said, I am come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And I'm saying, in order for us to acquire this full and abundant life, to make it a part of our everyday experience in our marriage, in our relationship, our transaction with other people, our relationship, in order for that to happen, we have to sit back and we have to look at the context. We have to look at how we are doing things on a daily basis. Because, like I said, the motivation is still the same. I want to have a healthy body. I want to eat healthy. Those things are still there. But I have to make some changes. And that's what I really want for us to focus on tonight, that it's not just about mastering motivation. That's not good enough. Because if people say, well, I need motivation, or I'm motivated, all of that it sounds good, but you have to begin to do the analysis, do the assessment, and begin to make some changes in terms of what you need to do. So since Monday, well, actually, for the past 4 days or so, actually not going to the cafeteria to get a French fry, and I'm making a concerted effort not to. As a matter of fact, I've been taking my lunch and breakfast to work every day since it's Monday. Past couple of days, I've been taking everything that I need, tea and everything else. I'm taking with me to work, which means then I don't have to go to the cafeteria. So what I've done is the goal is still the same. Notice the goal has never changed, but now the behavior has changed. The context have changed. And now I'm on a path now where I can now accomplish my long-term goal by making sure that my short-term goals are measuring up with what my long-term goals ought to be and will be. And now they work together, and that there's a congruency between those things. And now I feel a little better about where I am and who I am. So I think that principle can be applied to just about anything in our lives, and we have to begin to take some responsibility for the outcome of what we want in our lives. So as you step back and you look at your life tonight, you have to ask, what is it that I want to change? Some of you, you may feel like you need to advance at your workplace. You may need to go back to school, start taking some courses, or some of you may be in a dead-end relationship. You've been dating this person for a long time. It's not going anywhere, and you keep promising yourself that you're going to do something different, but you're still stuck. But you want something better. That's the point I want to make. So the long-term goal remains the same. It's just that what is happening, you're not changing the context. So it might mean you may need to start taking some classes, and it may be because it might be your goal is to lose a few pounds. So, and the goal is that not just to join a gym, but to actually start doing some things. And it might be setting some time aside where you can start doing, maybe walk 2 miles a day or 1 mile away, or start riding a bicycle, or teaming up with someone where you start doing some walking on it every day and start measuring whatever it takes that you need to do. Now, when you look at the spiritual aspect of that as well, so that's more the biological, the physical, also the spiritual. There may be some things that you need to do in terms of to enrich your own spiritual lives. What are some of the things that you've always wanted to do, but you're not doing? And so we have to begin to think about what are some of the changes, some of the things that I need to get rid of. And so you have to change your environment. You have to change your behavior. You have to change your pattern of thinking, the way that you're thinking, because I think we have to begin to, redesign our environment. And when I say redesign our environment, what I mean is, the places you go to, the people you find yourself attracted to, attached to, the ways you're thinking, maybe your entertainment, how you're spending your money, the things that you're purchasing. Maybe it's a debt issue. Maybe you find yourself in debt, but you have to look at your behavior. And of course, your goal might be to be debt free. That's a wonderful goal. We all want, financial independence. We don't want to be in debt, but you have to begin to step back and say, well, how is it what leads me into this? What is within the context that I need to change so that I can become economically independent? I can become a spiritually healthy and stronger individual. I can make a more meaningful contribution in my parenting skills, style, enrich my marriage. What are some of the things that I can do to do that? And so you have to begin to think in terms of making some significant changes within the context of things. So I just want to be sure that I'm not missing anything. So I'm kind of taking some look at the screen here to make sure that I'm sure that Kamal will let me know if there is a call. And for those of you who are listening in SVG, please feel free to make your contribution, and so that you can call any of the numbers, or you can send a WhatsApp message as well. And you don't have to necessarily stay with the material that I am presenting. You certainly have other alternatives. But I want to say that habits don't develop through motivation. And that's that. And you may not necessarily agree with that. You may not necessarily share that view. But I want to say to you that habits don't develop simply because you're motivated. Yes, it is true that you want to have a nicer body, you want to go to the gym. Those are all your motivation. You want to lose some weight, you want to be more spiritual in your life, you want to have a richer prayer life. There's so many things that you may want to do, and you may be motivated to do all of those things. But I'm saying to you, when it comes to habit, it has to do with the behavior, the consistent behavior repetitively that you keep doing again and again. So if you want to have a healthy relationship, you got to step back and say, look, chart out the kind of person you want to spend your life with and spend some time grooming that. And eventually it will follow through. So let's not, because people sometimes say, well, you're failing because you're not motivated. I want you to know I am motivated. I want to have a healthy lifestyle. I am motivated. So the question is not about that. It's about convenience. It's about the short-term things that I do, not looking at the fact that these short-term things that I'm doing are having a significant impact on the long-term goals that I want to have. And so we have to begin to look at our behaviors, look at the way we're doing things. So what this means is that you can have strong habits, but not be aware of them. This is all that this is simply saying, that there may be some habits that are so deeply embedded, that they're so obvious, they're so deeply embedded within your character and your personality that you may not be conscious of them. That is why you keep winding up in the same dysfunctional relationship. You get out of one and you're back in the same one, another one like it. It's because you're not looking, you're doing things. These things are happening subconsciously and you're repeating the same behavior. The same thing to do with any form of addiction. And one of the treatment about addiction is getting people to look more closely at those habits, the things that they're doing on a daily basis, that they keep repeating. And I do this quite frequently in most of my counseling. This is what I try to get people to sit back and make decisions. If you're going to think about, tomorrow, what will tomorrow look like? What are some of the changes that you're going to make tomorrow that you're doing today that is creating problems for you? Maybe you're in a dysfunctional relationship. Maybe you're in a physically abusive relationship right now. And maybe you've been in it for a long time. What are some of the changes that you're going to make that in terms of changing the context of that so that you can now begin to move forward and move in a different direction? So again, I want to make it very clear that a lot of things that we're doing, we may not be conscious of it because they're happening to us automatically. It's part of who we are. It's built into the system. And that's how the brain works. Like I said, I always say the brain is lazy. So the brain figures out if you're doing something repetitively, consistently, the brain develops a template for it. And all of a sudden, you don't have to think about it. It just happens. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. Once you couldn't, and then one day, all of a sudden, you can ride a bicycle. Now it's there. The template is there. You don't ever have to be bothered. It's there. Unless, of course, you have some kind of a brain trauma or surgery in the brain or something where all those tissues are gone, the memory system is gone. Then you have to go back and relearn all of that. There are people who have had, severe impact on their brain and they've lost, motion. They can't speak. Half their body can't even move anymore. So we understand all of that. But I want to look at it from the standpoint of how the belief system, the practices, the context, the thing that we do repetitively, how they can come back to cripple us and cause us to be on a path of destruction, self-destruction, self-destructive behaviors, addictive behaviors, relationships, same kind of financial situation where you find yourself repeating and doing the same thing again and again, even though your motivation is not that. Your motivation, the information, all of that stuff, but you find yourself repeating the same kind of behaviors again and again. Okay, so let me try to continue with our discussion. So I wanted you to remember this as we talk about this. I want you to be able to identify, what would be some of your long-term goals versus some of your short-term goals. So what are some of the things in terms of the short-term things that you're doing that seem to not material helping you to realize some of the long-term goals that you have? And I use the health thing, the food thing, because that's a very simple illustration. I think you can wrap your head around that. You can understand that. How, I have folks who, they have a lot of snacks at nights, late at nights, and they, pushing 300 pounds. They're getting bigger and bigger, but they can't stop eating late at night snacks. And they do this. And you can see where it's having an impact. But they want to lose weight. So the motivation is they want to lose weight. But the behavior, the practice, the short-term things that they're doing, they wake up in the middle of the night and they want to hit on the snacks. And what happens, it creates a whole other problem. And then it's hard to get that weight off. I mean, most of us already know that, how difficult it is. It is easy to put on, but it's extremely difficult to get rid of some of that weight as well. So we have to begin to understand that what we're doing sometimes differs from our habitual behaviors. The thing that you're doing consciously may be completely different from the things that you're doing automatically that seem to be repetitive and creating some of the same problems that you're having. So a lot of what troubles us in our daily life is more of our inability to control those unwanted habits. And those are the, for example, the drug addiction. I mean, no one wants to be on crack or the cocaine. No one wants the outcome of that, But what happens? It becomes part of the craving that you have, and you keep repeating the same behavior. You're either getting in trouble in terms of your own family system, financially, you get in trouble legally, and it go on and on again. And that's one of the reasons that I sometimes do the pushback on the legalizing of cannabis. And I know that there are a lot of research out there that says, there's some wonderful qualities and it does help, but I still push back on it because there are, the addictive elements. It's a behavior, the context. And so once you begin to revolve your life around that kind of a behavior, eventually chemically the body begins to react to it. And once the body begins to react to it, then it becomes a part of the system. And it certainly creates a severe problem with it. And a lot of the people that I work with, they do cocaine, and cocaine takes them up. But they use the cannabis, the marijuana, the pot, whatever terminology you want to use, because it buffers this, it brings them down. But if you develop that context where you get high on the cocaine or the heroin, and then you use the alcohol, most young people these days don't even bother with the alcohol anymore. They just use the marijuana, the cannabis. So you use that to buffer the thing, and after that, it becomes a cycle. And before you know it, you have to ask yourself, well, which is the problem? Is it the cocaine or is it the marijuana? What's the problem here? But it becomes an automatic part of the automatic system, and it becomes an addictive behavior, and it becomes a substitute. And once it becomes a substitute, now it becomes even more severe problem, that it creates havoc on your biological system, your psychological system, your mental health situation, your relational system, and it becomes a nightmare. And so that's one of the main reasons that I do push back on the legalizing of marijuana. It's funny. I was listening to a person that said, if you want to be high in marijuana, I suggest you be on the ground floor, not on the fifth floor. So why not? because your judgment becomes impaired. And when your judgment becomes impaired, you may feel good, but then you may think you can fly. And the truth of the matter is, you can't. So all I'm saying to us is we have to look at the context. We have to look at the choices that we're making every day. And we have to understand that once those decisions, for example, if you think about the person, and here's where the problem comes in. A lot of people that I work with, the question becomes, well, I have a bipolar disorder. Well, my question to you is, which comes first? Because all the bipolar disorder is that you become manic, I become depression, you're either up, you're down. But think about this. If you're on cocaine or crack, it takes you up. And so what do you take in order to bring you down? You take the cannabis or the marijuana in order to bring you down. So that becomes a lifestyle. Now you show up with the clinician, and now we're seeing a person who's manic or a person who goes from being very manic to being very depressed. So you have to ask yourself, well, let's have some discussion. Is this a legitimate bipolar disorder, or is this a drug affected behavior where if you do those combination of the heroin or the coke, the crack, and opposed to the marijuana, you're up one day and you're down the next day, basically. So what the psychiatrist may decide to do, well, we can help you to balance this out. Why don't we give you a mood stabilizer? So now the mood stabilizer helps you to stay in the middle somehow, but you do the crack and you still go up, or you do the marijuana to bring you down, and then you do the mood stabilizer. So now you got three substance going on at the same time. So what's happening is you're creating a lifestyle that now you're creating a long-term goal, because remember, all of this might be because of a post-traumatic stress disorder, abuse of some kind, or abandonment, or whatever may have happened in your childhood to have caused you to be looking at these remedies as substitutes, which is short-term. Sooner or later they become the long-term process, and it changed your life. It changed your relationship at home with your spouse and your children, and then you're making a new relationship with the criminal justice system. Now you have a relationship with a probation officer, so now you're bringing in other people in your life. That's happening. And you're having a relationship with a lawyer, that now have to defend you, and there's all kinds of relationships that you have. And it may even escalate to the point where you find yourself incarcerated. And sometimes it may be pulling for 10 years, 15 years, all as a result of transforming a short-term situation into a long-term situation. What's the solution? Change the context. Change the context. And I think that this is the alternative that Jesus has put forward for us. And the alternative he has put before us is that I can help you to transform your life. And he gave us some simple things. He said, look, you know the truth, know about yourself, know about the context that you're willing to subject yourself to, know about the consequences of that. Step back from all of that and start making healthier choices. And hence, you're going to put yourself in a path where you can now begin to experience the full and abundant life, meaning you're fully alive, you're at peace with yourself, there's a sense of balance, and now you can begin to have that infectious life of being fully alive, impacting in your marriage, impacting in your parenting skills, enhancing your home life, where there is a sense of peace and a sense of security that your children will experience. And I think that's what Jesus gave his life, is so that we can become better human beings. God engineered us to be healthy, to be like him, to have his character, to have all of those God-like creative aspects in us. And I think some of these short-term goals that we're prone to allow to become long-term goals become the crippling aspect of our lives. We see this all the time. Young people with great aspirations go off to college and never really finish for whatever reason, either because they take the path of drugs or or they begin to associate with unhealthy people, or pregnancy, whatever it is that they don't seem to, but they still have the goal that they want to, but they don't seem, because they have forgotten and they have allowed some of those short-term things to become long-term goals, and that in terms cripples them. So I'm hoping, if you have any questions, feel free to share them with us, and I certainly would love to hear, what some of your comments are. And we're certainly glad to have Nadine with us. Linda, it's certainly privileged to have you with us. Sister Roberts and Stephanie and Nervous. It's all a pleasure to have all of you. But you guys are so silent tonight. There's nothing going on. I'm doing all the talking. So even Kamal is silent, and that's okay. Maybe he's resting. I don't know. But feel free to share
I'm
some
always
of
here.
your thoughts with us, if you do. Kamal, anything you want to share with us?
Just to let you know that I'm here, I'm listening, I'm monitoring the phone lines. So far, we haven't got any callers, and I'm just encouraging folks to call. And the number is 457-9997.
Okay, so and thank you for that. So many of our behavior patterns of social interaction, or health, or financial behaviors, or spiritual behavior, are the result of repetitions. We seem to be repeating the same behaviors. I mean, you look at the escalation of gang-related activities, the drug situation, even the escalation in mental health, even some of what we're seeing here in the United States, the escalation of the level of rage and anger that we're seeing. People are just going beyond, who they really are in terms of their own internal values, because they've gotten down a path where they're tired, a sense of hopelessness have stepped in. But what has happened is they've allowed a lot of their short-term goals to take over and become long-term goals, and that certainly has created a problem. So what we're saying is, if we repeat behaviors that work in a short-term ways, then that in turn, those behaviors will in turn become long-term goals. And so be sure that whatever behaviors that you're going to be engaging in, step back and make sure that they fit in with what the long-term goal is. So again, if your goal is to be healthy this year, to be able to maintain good mental health, good medical health, be able to avoid financial debt, be able to be, all of those things, then you have to begin to step back and say, let me look at some of the behaviors that I'm doing, some of the short-term context, some of the things that are, there are things that I'm purchasing maybe that I don't need to purchase. I need to make some significant changes in some of these areas if things are going to change for me. Now, in Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, it talks about the renewing of our minds. It's talking about, not to be conformed to this world, Romans chapter 12 and verse 2, but to be renewed. And in my mind, what it's really saying is, step back and look at some of the short-term goals that you have allowed to become long-term goals, that has crippled you in your relationship, your financial situation, your health, even our health. You think simple things as, smoking, where for whatever reason, whatever you started out with, now it's become a serious problem, to where it's now having severe medical impact on your system. And so we see a lot of these things are having serious impact on the way we live. The kinds of things that we eat. You look, especially in the Caribbean, we all seem to like sugar cane. We grew up around sugar cane, so we all kind of like sweet. We like sugar, but you look at the fact that what that the impact of diabetes, what is happening. But we have to understand that is as a result of some of the choices that we've made in terms of what we like. We like sweet drinks. We like sugar. We like a lot of salt in our food. We want to, we want things to taste good. But the point is, there's a price for that. And the price is usually long term. And so we have to begin to make choices that are going to be in our best interest. So habits, I think, from the very beginning of it, the habits, there are certain rewards, there are certain things that we get from it. And we have to begin to make some better assessment and begin to change our goals, change the way that we're doing things. And I think if we can do that, I think certainly we can begin to reverse things. So again, I want to emphasize this point that, our immediate short-term goals might be okay, short term. But what happens is the brain sometimes get confused. That yes, your intention was to make it short term, but somewhere along there, because of the repetitive nature of it, the brain decides to convert that short term goal into a long term goal. And that's why you see in some areas where, people who are never married sometimes don't even have a job, yet they have 8 children, and they can hardly feed one, much as to have an 8, because we don't change the behavior. And we keep repeating the same behavior again and again. And then we expect government to fix the problem. We expect, and sometimes government sometimes give us the impression that they can fix all of our bad behaviors. And I'm saying it's not possible for government to fix all of our bad behavior. We must take responsibility for the choices that we are making, because those choices have serious impact. And it may be, it may take you 40 years. And 40 years of bad behavior can have serious economic situation in terms of our healthcare system, our mental health system. And then what happens that we expect the government to fix all of that stuff. And it's just not going to happen. We have to begin to take responsibilities for ourselves, for our health, our psychological mental health, our spiritual health, begin to be what God wants us to be. And I think once we begin to do that, then we're going to begin to examine carefully the context of our behaviors in terms of our short-term goal and in terms of our long-term goals. And I think if we can do that, then I think we certainly can change something. So bad habits are very expensive. It costs us a lot. And sometimes divorce can be traced back to some of our short-term goals that have become long-term goals, that cripples our marriages, impact our children, impact our individual life. I have some people, as a matter of fact, just one person I was just counseling just recently, and I'm like, okay, he owes over 100 grand, and it is funny thing about child support is that, they would arrest you, they would incarcerate you, but they don't use the time you spend incarcerated as to deduct the money. You come on and you still owe the same amount of money, and they put you back in jail again until you can afford to pay it. But while you're incarcerated, you lose your job, you have no way of paying, but the money is still there and it's clocking up every month. So even when they release you after a year or so, you still owe the same money, and they expect you to now. But then because you've been incarcerated, you lost your job, you can't get a good job, you can't make the money. So what happens? Your life is essentially over. But your life is over because of the short-term goals, because of the decisions that you've made. And now, I think it was Paul who puts it, well, Jeremiah did say that too. It says that the wages of sin is death. And it says, whatever a man sow, that they shall reap. And that's something, when we get to that place, sometimes we even with a little solution, we still use the same old system in order to fix problems in the future, which doesn't work. Because if the same solution didn't work yesterday, what make you think it's going to work today? So we have to begin to make some significant changes in our lives if we're going to be able to turn things around. So here's a point that I want to make. Change your context, change your habits. And that's the point that I really want to hammer home tonight. That if we can do those things, we will be able to certainly make a difference in our lives. Um, and I just want to make sure that I just want to review to make sure that there are no comments here that I'm overlooking, that folks are with me on some of these things right here. Make sure that there are no comments. Okay. So again, I want to say change your context and change your habits. And if we can do all of this, and let me just say, this is not a matter of willpower. This is not. It's not context versus willpower. I have the willpower. I know. No. It's about slowly changing the context, and that's why I say people who are in recovery. If you really want to develop and to cultivate a sober lifestyle, then you have to think seriously about changing the places you used to hang out, change the people you used to hang out with, and begin to develop healthier goals for yourself. And once you start doing that, and the discipline, because that takes discipline also in order to be able to do those kinds of things. It's not easy. It's not nice for me to go out in the middle of work, go start the car up, sit in a cold car to go and get lunch during my lunch break. In this weather, it is beastly out there. It is very cold out there, right? But I'm just saying you're going to have to cultivate the habit. If your goal is truly to have a healthy lifestyle and begin to eat nutritional, healthy food, then you're going to have to begin to plan and to make those choices. Because ultimately, as you make those choices and you make those changes, things are certainly going to change in your life. So let's not use, because a lot of people use willpower, and I think it's nothing more than an excuse. Because willpower won't do it. You have to make some changes. And those changes are very significant, because in order to override all of those things, we have to begin to learn how to make those changes. So John, 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 to 17, he talks about, do not love the world, nor the things in the world. And if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not within him. Then in verse 16, it says, for all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. In other words, what is simply saying, all the things you can see and all the things you can taste and the status that comes with money and power, and all of that is what's crippling many of us. Many of us feel, as a matter of fact, much of our young people, we model to them that if you want to get ahead in life, you have to accumulate wealth, which ensure you power, and that gives you status, and then you're at the top of the heap. And we see this all the time. And it is very shameful when this happens. And we see this in every phase of life, that the higher up you go, it seems you begin to lose your humanity as you go up. And that's why I think Jesus taught us this powerful lesson when he said to us, he, as a matter of fact, he didn't say he just did it. He just took a basin with water, took a towel, and began to wash his disciples' feet, because he wanted to let them know that if you want to be first in his kingdom, you're going to have to become a servant. And he washed the feet of the disciples. But not many of our leaders get that message. Not many of our preachers get that lesson. You see, that's one of the things that we talk all the things about Jesus, but some of the basic fundamental lessons that he has taught us, what it truly means to be in his kingdom, you're going to have to be a servant. You're going to have to love God, love yourself, and love each other. And it's very simple. We have all kinds of doctrines that we peddle out there. And we fight all kinds of, but you notice we don't fight about loving each other. We don't fight about that. We fight about all the other things. But some of the basic things we don't fight about humility, about washing each other's feet. We don't fight about forgiving each other. We don't fight about all of that. But our religious world is so divisive. But look at what we are divided on. Look at what the content of what we're arguing about. And you'll see it's not about what Jesus taught and practiced. Jesus' life was so simple, not complex at all. And what he said was that if someone hit you on the left, you turn to the other side. Someone asks you to go a mile, you go 2 miles. That was simple lessons. And those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, changing the context. If you change the context, then you change your life. And those are some of the things that we need to feel. So in this, I want to read this last verse in 1 John chapter 2 and verse 17. It says, the world is passing away and also its lust. But the one who does the will of God lives forever. Is talking about the long-term goal. The long-term goal is life everlasting. And that life everlasting, once you're on that path of life eternal, it enriches your marriage, your parenting skills. It makes you a humble person. You're not going to be arrogant and oppressive and practicing injustices, overrunning your brother, climbing on the backs of others to get to the top. We're living in a world where we use people and we love things. And this passage is simply saying, once you are on this path of this full and abundant life, life changes. You see yourself as a servant. There's a sense of humility that builds in. And that's where harmony and unity becomes part of the whole process. And where best for us to practice that than in the home itself. And so that is kind of where we have about 7 minutes to go into our program tonight. And so I want to talk, just move forward a little bit. Let me just make sure I check to make sure that I don't have any comments that I'm overlooking here. Oh yeah, now I see some comments. Spiritual rebirth, not temporary drug fixes. And then we have one other comment. Instead of dwelling on negative thoughts and emotions, take one day a week to prioritize your own well-being and do something that nourishes your mind, body, and soul by adopting new habits and then let me see what it says here. See more. Adapting and release the weight of resentment and bitterness. So I truly want to thank you, Valerie. I certainly want to thank you for that comment. So just let me see if there's any more comments that I'm missing. Okay, Nova says, hello everyone. Samantha says, it is true, it takes 21 days to make a bad habit. Good practice might be to replace each bad habit with a good habit to fill that void. So what Samantha is into saying, it's not just about replacing, but you have to fill it with something. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm trying to read the other, but I can't get, there's another comment, but I can't get to it because there's something above it. It says, what does it say? It says, fire, indeed bad for you. Keep up the great work. Okay, thank you about that one. Okay, make sure there's no more comments that we have, and thank you all for the comments. Now I figure out how to get the comments. If I hit there's a section that says comments, so if I hit that box, I get all of it. So, but let me just quickly, in terms of the 5 minutes that I have left, talk a little bit about cultivating this daily consciousness of really merging, because the ultimate destination of, we have to have something that we want to copy. I really think it's important for us to identify what is it. Most of our young people, want to copy somebody that's on the TV or famous. That's why you see tattoos all over the place, because most of our athletes and professionals seem to have tattoos over all their body. So now our young people wants to do that. I see a lot of our women also have their little tattoos on their ankle and all over the place. So we always want to copy something. And what I'm saying to us tonight is this: be very careful about what you want to copy as a model that you want to build your long-term goals upon. That is very critical for us to understand that. And so what I want us to understand is we were created, unless you believe in Darwinism, we just evolved. But if you come from a Christian theological standpoint, where we were created in the image of God, that there is a purpose behind all of that. And the purpose behind all of that is to be like our Creator. And our Creator has outlined for us that the model you want to develop is to be kind, to be gentle, to be forgiven, to honor each other, to reflect to each other how wonderful, how beautiful they are. And if you practice that in your home, that is part of that divine, that God image in us, where you're mirroring to your children how wonderful they are, how much you love them. They're mirroring back the same thing to you. And that happens where it becomes part of the natural habitat of that individual. Hence, when they go out to elementary school, the first grade school, middle school, high school, they mirror that to their peers instead of fighting and becoming nasty. And even in some of our local congregation, people are just bitter. They're just nasty. And you wonder, if religious people can be that nasty, and supposedly they are the ones who are closest to God. And if they're nasty, I mean, you think about it, that's why a lot of our young people have no use for what they perceive as organized religion, because it's the most corrupt. You have better friends outside than you do. And so I'm saying to us, we have to find good models in order to mirror, because you obviously have to start from somewhere. And I think Jesus has given us that model. He lived a perfect life. He made the sacrifice. He paid. I mean, his life was in every way a life that we can model after and that we can follow. But he has taught us in that beautiful life how we are to humble ourselves and how we are to be kind to each other. And I think that is a wonderful thing for us. So how we feel about ourselves crucially affects virtually every aspect of our experience, from the way we work, we function at work, in love, in the way we operate as parents, how high in life we will likely to go. All of that has to do with how we feel about ourselves, how we experience ourselves. And I'm saying to us, we need to invest on that. We need to begin to look at who you are, look at your identity, look at what your ambitions are, look at what's driving you. And as you do that, the mirror you need to look into is Jesus and him crucified. Look into that resurrected Christ and let that be the model that you want to follow. And I think if you do that, I believe that we can come away. So that's my message for today. And I certainly want to thank all of you for your comments. I'm trying to see if there's any more comments, but I really can't see any more. So, but I really truly want to thank all of you for the patience of being here with us here tonight. And certainly want to thank Kamal for his quietly behind the scene, waiting and, monitoring these two programs, the one before this one and this one as well. And so I truly want to thank him. And I want to thank all of you tonight for tuning in. But I will definitely continue this program next week. Let me make a point where I ended so I could begin next week at that same point. But I want to continue this whole piece. I think it's important that we understand how you actualize the full and abundant life. How do you make that a reality in your marriage, in your personal life, at your workplace? How can you you impact others in their transaction with others so that they can see and experience that full and abundant life in you that may attract them to also begin to want to model in that same direction in their own homes and in their own lives. So I want to thank each of you and may God bless all of you. And please stay safe. And I want to also, remember all those who may be struggling. Some of you may have lost family members. Some of you may have be facing certain medical crisis, mental health crisis, financial crisis, whatever you're going through tonight. I want you to know that you can begin to trust our Heavenly Father, that God can give you whatever you need. He is the rock, He is the salvation, and He is there. But you need to begin to acknowledge Him in your life so He become a present reality in your everyday experience. And that's what the Hebrew writer says. Without faith, it is impossible, for you must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. So thank you so much, and may God bless you, and see you all next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Claudius Davis. Certainly, it's always a pleasure having you on a Wednesday here to bring the Full and Abundant Life radio program to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and pretty much the entire world. Do join him again next Wednesday from 9 until 10 right here on WeFM for another program, the Full and Abundant Life radio program. Thank you very much, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, sir, and see you next week, same time, same place.
All
Bye-bye.
the best. Bye. We've got just about 3 minutes.